Over the last few years, we've seen a mass exodus from the modern church. Millions of people are walking away, citing deep frustration, burnout, and a feeling that the institution has failed them. When you grow up in a Western democratic society, you develop a specific reflex. If a majority of people decide to leave a system or vote against it, our societal programming tells us that the system itself must be flawed. We apply this exact same logic to the church. We treat it like a consumer product. If the crowds are leaving, the assumption is that the provider isn't keeping its customers satisfied and therefore needs to update its services. But what if the baseline we use to judge the church's success or failure is completely upside down? The sheer number of people leaving might not actually be evidence that the church is broken. Instead, it points to a massive misunderstanding of what the church was originally designed to be. To understand that original design, look at the historical accounts of Jesus arriving in Jerusalem. As he rode into the city, the crowds gathered, laying down palm branches in his path and shouting in anticipation. Laying down palm branches was not a culturally appropriate greeting for a philosopher or a religious teacher. That specific action was the strict, ancient protocol used exclusively for welcoming a sovereign king. This animated diagram highlights the structural difference between religion and a kingdom. On the left, religion operates as a man-made system of rituals, where scattered individuals try to reach upward to access a deity. On the right, a kingdom functions as a top-down sovereign government, complete with distinct citizens, established laws, and inherent benefits flowing directly from the monarch. In this true kingdom model, the citizens do not operate a democracy. They don't cast votes on the direction of the government or get to decide which rules apply to them. They submit entirely to the sole authority of the monarch. God is not a religious figurehead waiting for cultural approval. He is a sovereign king actively managing an established divine government on earth. Much of what we call religion is actually a human system of theology and interpretation. It is man's attempt to create a set of rules for how to access God, how to please him, and how to get prayers answered. But the scriptures use a very specific term to describe the people of God. Look at this diagram. Instead of a chaotic, man-made structure, the original Greek texts use the word ekklesia. Ekklesia literally translates to a people called out of the world. When citizens enter this new government, they detach from the chaotic system they used to know, and they begin operating under the king's own principles. Because it is defined by a specific people being called out, the church cannot be a physical building. Nor can it be a social club or an organization that mankind invented. The church is an active extraction of citizens from the world. If we try to force that extracted community to operate on the world's democratic, consumer-driven principles, it will inevitably fail. Many people today correctly recognize that the church isn't a physical building, but they use that theological fact as a loophole, treating it as an excuse to stop physically gathering with other believers altogether. Entering this kingdom changes a person's status from a distant subject to an adopted child. This means every citizen is part of the same household, the family of God. Think about an earthly family reunion. People will often drive for hours just to show up to grandma's house, even if there is deep dysfunction or differing opinions or relatives not speaking for years. They prioritize the gathering simply because it is family. If you are placed into God's family, the baseline expectation is that you consistently show up to meet with the rest of the family. You don't abandon the gathering just because the individuals are imperfect. Using the truth that the church isn't a building to justify your own isolation actually violates the primary design of being adopted. You cannot function as a member of the family if you refuse to sit at the table. In a kingdom structure, the only voice that gets to dictate success or failure is the king's. We often validate a church using superficial metrics. We look at podcast downloads, massive social media followings, flawless sermons, and high production value, assuming these numbers equal health. But the king set a very explicit standard for how the world will recognize his citizens. He stated that they would be known by their love for one another. The king bypasses cultural relevance and media footprints. His singular standard for success is the internal health and devotion found within those relationships. The functional reality of biblical love is that it cannot exist in a vacuum. It absolutely demands physical and relational proximity. You cannot practice the core principles of the kingdom by yourself. Bearing others' burdens and forgiving offenses require the friction of real community. It is physically impossible to disciple the next generation or build the spiritual endurance required to navigate life while sitting in isolation. We have to abandon the consumer mindset that tells us to simply leave a broken institution. The call is to anchor yourself in a physical, local community, embrace the imperfections, and take your rightful place in the kingdom family.
Hey, if you're watching this video, we want to invite you to come join us Sundays at 11 a.m.